Black Ops 6 just dropped, and it's different from every Call of Duty we've ever played. So to ensure you're playing at your best, I've put together 29 simple tips to help you instantly improve, rank up fast, and dominate. Welcome to Warzone Bootcamp. These tips are going to be split into 3 categories: gunfights, strategy, and the one we're diving into now, before you play. To be clear, there's actually quite a bit you need to understand before jumping into your first match very underprepared. Black Ops 6 completely changed everything we've come to know as Call of Duty players, and while it still may feel very similar, if you don't change some things, you're pretty much guaranteed to fail. So let's start by getting you on the right settings. I would like to add, I have an in-depth video covering every setting in the game on my second channel, Expel Plus. While that's definitely worth the watch, the first of 3 you need to change is for Omni movement. With Black Ops 6, they added in a lot of assist settings that are supposed to do a bit of the work for you, but the only one you should actually turn on is Sprint Assist. This one needs to be set to Tactical Sprint Assist, along with having the delay set to 0. That's going to make it where the second you move your analog stick, you'll be able to fully utilize their new Omni movement mechanic, allowing you to slide and dive in pretty much any direction. Next, I'd recommend, only for multiplayer, to set your interact behavior to prioritize reload. There's not a lot of times where you're going to need to pick up a gun off the ground, but the number of times you're going to need to refill your magazine is pretty much constant. This will keep you from making the mistake of accidentally picking up random floor loot when you don't want to. And the third setting is changing your slide and dive behavior to hybrid. Personally, before hopping into Black Ops 6, I didn't use this setting. I preferred using slide only and just chose to never dive. But with Omni movement, you pretty much have to be hybrid. Don't stress it too much. It won't take a ton of time to get used to, but the impact it has on your gameplay is immense. Moving past the settings, my next tip would be to fully grasp the perk system. In the past, we've had 4 perks, 2 of which came from the 3rd category. This year, it's different. We're down to a pick 3 system, but if you choose the right perks, they actually give you a bonus. For example, if you find yourself to be more of an active rushing player, you can choose 3 red perks and you'll be given a bonus that allows you to move faster and regenerate health for a short time after each elimination. The cool thing is, each of these perks that fall under a specific umbrella will have their own upgrade when used in tandem. So before you make the decision of what perks to use, see if it's worth it to trade out one of them for the bonus. Alongside perks, there's also the return of Wildcards. These are going to shake up the way your class works and allow you to change things you normally can't in your loadout. It could be adding Overkill, a 4th perk, and more. Speaking of, if you do choose the Overkill wildcard, it's incredibly important which weapon you put as your primary. No, it's not going to make it better in any way, but it will affect your speed in every single game you play. When you spawn into a match, the weapon in your first slot is going to be the one in your hand. But if you find that's not the weapon you're using most often, I'd go ahead and change it out. Personally, I'm a firm believer in putting the close range weapon in my primary slot, and my secondary can hold the assault rifle or the sniper. This is going to allow you to take on enemies that are trying to spawn trap you, letting you break free without having to constantly swap weapons before fighting. And moving into the final tip I have before speaking on strategy, I have to recommend putting together a team if at all possible. I know a lot of you are like me and tend to play solo all the time, but when it comes to multiplayer games, it's right there in the title. When you dive into a match by yourself, you're gonna be at a massive disadvantage, but if you can get some teammates that you work together and communicate with, you're far more likely to win matches, get higher kill games, and just have a better time overall. Now, as you dive into a match, you're gonna notice a few things. Spawn locations are terrible, players seem to be sweatier than ever, and frankly, you suck. It's okay, I felt the same way until I changed the way I was thinking. Which brings me to my first strategy tip: slow down and think. It's easy to get caught up in the action and just run at the enemy over and over, but it's the fastest way to lose matches, go full tilt, and be ready to play another game for the night. Instead of doing the same thing until you start knocking your head against the wall, try to think about what you're doing and be more present in your gameplay. Most likely, you'll be able to identify the issue with how you're playing and adjust accordingly. On a similar wavelength, a great way to combat enemies doing the same thing to you is to let the enemy push you. I'm not telling you to camp by any means. Sure, that's a strategy that works just fine, but if you find yourself in a match where the enemies just seem to outgun you every single time you push to get an elimination, it might be time to let them make the mistakes. Find an area where they continue to funnel through and hold it down while they continue to push. Speaking of, don't be the person that's running into the funnel. Like I just said, there's basically always spots where players funnel, and Call of Duty maps are usually built with that in mind. In fact, they actually have a 3-lane system that is meant to force players into funnels where gunfights happen. However, in Black Ops 6, you can usually find another route that allows you to get where you need to be to eliminate the enemies more effectively. My recommendation is to actively look for that route at all times, and moreover, don't be scared to run away when an enemy has locked down an area. With these maps being a 3-lane system, certain spots are gonna be hard for you to control, but there's no one forcing you to go any specific way. If you find yourself in a situation where you can't push something or you're gonna die, just run away. Regain, find a better way, and take that. I've found the best way to catch the enemy off guard is to play the edge. Players usually tend to go straight down the middle lane of each map, but if you can find the edge route that allows you to get behind, above, or hidden below, you'll find yourself in a better position overall. And more important than anything else is your positioning. When you're flying through the map of your enemies, one of the things you need to be on the lookout for is the best place to engage. It's best to find somewhere most of your body is covered and the enemy is going to be forced to show the entirety of theirs. If you're trying to go on a high kill streak, you're not going to be able to directly outgun your enemy every time. You need to make sure that they can't hit their shots on you, and then you can continue to engage over and over from the same spot or a few beside each other. Just make sure wherever you decide to be, if you're playing with a random squad and not people you know, steer clear of them entirely. You can't trust random people. Most players are those that just run around like a chicken with its head cut off with the sole goal of wasting time. Since you're watching this video, that's probably not you. If you're gonna improve and continuously do better, you have to accept that random teammates are not gonna be helpful. They give away position and will get you killed more often than not. In fact, one thing random teammates always do, which tends to ruin a good game, is push into the enemy spawn. This is something you need to dodge doing to the best of your ability unless it's forced upon you. Spawns are interesting in this game, but they still work similar to games in the past. The more people you have in an area, the more people spawn on the other side. If you're trying to trap the enemy in their spawn, pushing into it is going to ruin your chances. Not only that, but once you're in their spawn, they spawn behind you, you get shot in the back, and you start from zero again. In a lot of cases, you may not fully understand where the enemy is spawning. I get it. But what you can do to alleviate that problem is to pay attention to your minimap. More specifically, you can tell where the enemy spawn is by the location of your own teammates. Yes, there are going to be players that aren't in their spawn, but if you need to know the most likely location of where the enemy is spawning, it's going to be the exact opposite location of the majority of your own team. If you're having trouble reading the minimap, that's fully understandable. Black Ops 6 changed things up quite a bit, but here's what you need to know. Enemy players on the same level as you are going to show up as a solid red dot. Enemies on a different level will be an open circle. Around the outside of your minimap, you'll notice red highlights popping up. That's actually telling you the roundabout location or the direction of an enemy, even though they aren't close enough to you to show as a dot. My recommendation for every single match you play would be to focus on collecting as much information as possible to use against your opponent. Now knowing how the minimap works, you can use that information while you play to know when an enemy is pushing a specific area, and you can be prepared to take on that gunfight. Or if you see there's too many enemies, you can take another route, a better position, and catch them off guard. To play for information, you have to have the right kill streaks. While this mostly comes down to the kind of player you are, I will always recommend the informative, more support style streaks over the high elimination streaks. It does come down to your own preference, but I use the personal radar, the UAV, and the counter UAV. This is going to constantly give you the most information while having the opposite effect on the enemy. Finally, if you're having a rough go at it and the games just aren't going your way, there's absolutely no shame in quitting. Most multiplayer matches last 10 minutes. This means you could be stuck in a match, getting absolutely slammed with no XP, no progress, nothing for that time. As long as you're playing by yourself, there's really no reason to stick around. Skill-based matchmaking can be rough sometimes. In most situations, it's actually very unfair with team balancing. You could end up with a bunch of duds because you're the best in the game and be stuck trying to carry people that aren't doing anything to help you. Don't feel bad, just back out and try again. If anything, it's to save your own sanity. Now for the most important section, gunfight tips. The first of which is by far the most important, and that's to have trigger discipline. Most players hop in and shoot at everything they can, but if you're playing for positioning, information, and ultimately the win, deciding when the best time to shoot is incredibly important. Sometimes it's going to be worth it to let one player slip by so you can get the entire enemy team just 4 to 5 seconds later. This is probably the hardest skill to learn, and it doesn't always pan out, but when it does, it's incredibly satisfying. On a similar note, knowing when to push and when not to push can be hard. Sometimes you really want the eliminations, but it isn't always worth it. My recommendation is to not over-challenge. If you fight an enemy and get one kill, don't get greedy when you see another pushing. Take a moment, reset, reload, then re-challenge. This will put you back in an advantage when your enemy would have been expecting to get a free kill on you because you were hurt. One thing that can be incredibly depressing about gunfights is how there always seems to be another player. This player might be behind you, beside you, or somewhere you never expect, but that's just it. In all cases, you can be prepared if you expect them to come from basically everywhere. When you take on an enemy, the best thing you can do is assume there's gonna be another. Don't immediately reload. Switch to another weapon and be ready to shoot. If the shoe doesn't drop, that's fine, but there's nothing wrong with being prepared. If you want to keep from getting into bad situations, grow a kill streak, and carry your team, one of the best things you can do is play for picks. This means running into a specific area, dropping one body, and getting out. When you pair this with the knowledge you have from the minimap and the strategy of dodging funnel spots, you end up being able to get more and more eliminations without dying when you shouldn't. One big change that directly impacts your ability to get those picks is the massive nerf that just happened to aim assist. In the past, you'd be able to get right up on enemies and get easy eliminations because aim assist would do all the work in the super close range. Instead of automatically turning your camera for you, if you're right up on the player, you have to do all the work now. With that in mind, it means you should stay a little bit farther away from your enemies. At least 5 meters would be a good bet, but 10 would be even better. However, let's say you get within that range. You get the elimination, but you're down on health, and another player's on the way. What do? Well, the best thing you can do for situations like that is to make sure you're running stims. Black Ops 6 is faster than ever, and players are going to be coming from all angles, as we talked about. You need to make sure to run stims. They pop fast, get you back to full health in an instant, and can get you back in a gunfight without you needing to fully run away. You can also use your field upgrades to give you an advantage in a gunfight. They seem to become available pretty quickly in this game, so you have the decision on which one you want to use. If you're running stims on all your classes, it might be best to consider the Assault Pack. It's going to give you another stim for when you run out and could keep you alive. But if you're someone who really loves playing the objective in hardpoint or domination, you may be better off with something like the trophy system. At the end of the day, it all comes down to your personal playstyle. Finally, the last thing that's going to make a massive impact on your ability to win gunfights is whether or not you're jumping. In the past, jumping has been incredible for keeping your enemy's bullets from hitting your head. But in this game, with the addition of Omni movement, you can literally slide in any direction. If anything, jumping in this game will get you killed faster because that's what people are expecting. Instead, stay near the ground, break your enemy's line of sights with a slide, and take them down with ease. As a bonus, because there's so many levels on weapons in this game, I wanted to give you 4 quick tips that are going to help you rank them up fast. First, as mentioned before, have a team. It really is going to help you push for more wins, get more kills, and just be happier while you're playing. At least if you all work together and communicate. Secondly, play the objective. Every single time you capture a flag or get a kill on a hard point, you get bonus points. This goes for any objective-based game. It can double and even triple the score you get in a match, which translates to a lot more levels. Third, try to go on kill streaks. While it's usually not possible for objective players, it's still worth it to try because you get bonus points after you hit certain kill streaks, meaning 5, 10, 15, or 20 kill bonuses. And finally, do your daily challenges. They're free points, usually incredibly easy, and end up giving you bonus points after you complete them all. Of course, if you found any of this useful, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and check out the video on screen for the best settings in Black Ops 6.